This is the Daily Tech News CES briefing for Tuesday, January 8th, 2025. To give you a complete look at the news coming out of CES, I'll be doing these shorter briefings each morning, followed by our regular DTNS live discussions in a separate episode later in the day. Some of you have told me you've been enjoying this. Thank you. Hope it's not too confusing to have two different versions of things going on. We've got a little bit of a change coming to the distribution method, but we're going to keep these briefings coming publicly and on Patreon for everybody starting next week. More about that later in the day, though. I'm Tom Merritt. Let's start with the big story. This is kind of a trends piece for me out of CES. We've seen a lot of trends at CES. AI has not been quite as marketing heavy as we would have thought. There's a lot of solar stuff here, but the Matter smart home standard is considered a little slow moving. And I've noticed a trait here at CES that I think will give people who are looking forward to Matter becoming adopted everywhere a little bit of hope. A lot of folks consider it a failure. I think that's too hasty. I think of it as similar to Bluetooth or even USB. You may not remember, or you may be too young to know, but those moved slow at adoption. But obviously now they are essential. No one doubts Bluetooth or USB. You might complain about how it works, but you know it does. You know it's out there. One aspect of standards like that is they have small moves in their early days that have big effects. One for USB was thumb drives. One for Bluetooth was headphones. And I think we saw a couple of these kinds of moves for Matter at CES. Every small smart home product I saw at the press events in the evenings touted Matter. They might have Apple, they might have Google, they might have Amazon. They usually didn't have all of them. They might have Samsung, I should mention Samsung, but they usually have like two of those plus Matter. Always Matter. It's building a wide base that will eventually just become normal. That's good. But of course, you also need moves from the big partners to come as well. And we got one of those on Tuesday. Google added full local control of Matter devices to Google Home hubs. So if you have a Google Nest Hub or a speaker or a Chromecast or a Google TV device that runs Android 14 and even some LG TVs, you can now control Matter devices in your smart home directly without having to go to the cloud. So that means you don't have to have an internet connection to tell Google Assistant to turn your light on, and Google doesn't have to know that you told it to turn your light on. It can just stay in your home network, which has a lot of other advantages like reducing lag. It's not a big deal, but sometimes I've noticed if I tell my smart speaker to turn a light on, it takes a beat. It's nicer to just have it click right on. Google also said it's working with MediaTek to build a new chip that includes Wi-Fi, Bluetooth LE for OEMs to easily build the Thread protocol. That is a protocol that uses all of those wireless protocols to work with Matter. This isn't for Google devices so much as to encourage others to build devices that make the most of Matter. This is MediaTek and Google working to advance the standard. I mean, they both get benefits out of it. Don't get me wrong. They're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart, but it is something that will benefit more device makers than just Google and MediaTek. Combine this all with the news earlier this week that Google, Apple, and others are automatically certifying Matter-compliant devices for their smart home platforms, and you can see the progress of the slow rise of Matter. Side note that just occurred to me right now is that MediaTek, in this announcement from Google, which isn't the hugest announcement on its own, also making the chip for NVIDIA. Just saying. Keep an eye on MediaTek. DTNS is made possible by you, the listener, thanks to Chris Zaragoza, Jim Hart, and Logan Larson. There's more we need to know today. Let's get to the briefs. First one isn't exactly a tech story, but I feel like it's worth noting. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch reported that OpenAI CEO Sam Altman's younger sister, Anne, has filed a lawsuit against him alleging sexual assault. Sam Altman responded by posting a letter that is signed by him, his brothers Max and Jack, and his mother Connie, denying those allegations. Anne Altman has made these kind of claims publicly before. This is the first time she has filed a lawsuit about them. I think the story is worth noting here because it's about the CEO of OpenAI, and it's possible that it could affect his running of the business. But otherwise, this is not a tech story, so I'm not going to go deep into it. I'd encourage you to follow it elsewhere if you would like to know more details. Just a little follow-up to the story of Meta phasing out its fact-checking partnerships in the U.S. for Facebook and Instagram and replacing them with community fact-checking. And thanks to those of you who enjoyed Justin's take on that yesterday. Wall Street Journal contacted YouTube, which said it is not making any changes to how it currently works with fact-checking partners. So YouTube is not making the same change, but it did not comment on future plans. And interestingly, YouTube uses a combination of approaches. Last year, it began to let a limited group of users add notes to videos in the US, which are then reviewed by those outside evaluators, but it has a community moderation program already in place. That leads me to mention that the Electronic Frontier Foundation came out with a rather carefully worded statement saying they like parts of what Meta's doing, but they support a mixed approach. They didn't mention YouTube specifically, but what they were describing is similar to what YouTube does, where you have some expertise mixed in with community works. And finally, Wired reports that Meta didn't give its third-party fact-checking partners notice of the impending changes before it announced them on Tuesday. So this blindsided PolitiFact and FactCheck.org and all of those. You may recall that Apple is prohibited from importing phones right now into Indonesia for sale, as it did not comply with a law requiring a certain amount of domestic investment in the country. This is something that India has done to great effect, and now Indonesia is trying to do it too. Apple isn't alone in this. This is also applying to big tech companies like Google and Samsung, but Apple is the first to come to an agreement with the government of Indonesia to bring billions of dollars worth of manufacturing in the form of a plant on Batam Island to manufacture AirTags. However, in an impressive hardball move, the Indonesian ministry still has declined to issue a local content certification, which would let Apple sell the iPhone 16 in Indonesia, because the plant that Apple is funding makes AirTags, not parts for iPhones. And the ministry says only iPhone parts are going to count to lifting that ban. And you can sell AirTags in Indonesia, I guess, but not iPhones till you start making parts of the iPhone here. Indonesia is the fourth most populous country in the world, behind China, the US, and India. That's a lot of potential customers. Your move, Apple. The U.S. has launched something called the Cyber Trust Mark, a label meant to appear on smart home products like home security cameras, televisions, your internet-connected appliances, your dishwashers, toasters, whatever, fitness trackers, climate control systems, thermostats, baby monitors, all that kind of stuff. To be able to display the logo, a device maker must meet the U.S. NIST standard, the National Institute of Standards and Technology cybersecurity criteria. A QR code must also be included next to the label that links to more details, like instructions on changing your default password, steps for securely configuring the device, details on how often you're going to get automatic updates, and what the minimum support period is. Certification is open for submission now, and so those labels will start appearing on boxes later this year. In order to comply with the European Union's antitrust order against Facebook Marketplace, Meta has offered to publish listings from competitor eBay in Facebook Marketplace. It's going to test the idea starting in France, Germany, and interestingly, the United States, letting users browse listings from eBay directly on Facebook Marketplace while completing their transaction on eBay. Meta is still appealing the EU ruling that resulted in them doing this, as well as that €798 million fine. Tuesday, Amazon Web Services, AWS, said it plans to spend $11 billion in Georgia to expand its infrastructure there. U.S. state of Georgia becoming a hot place to open a data center. That state has relatively affordable electricity. That's probably its biggest advantage. It's also got good fiber infrastructure and some tax incentives. But it is becoming so popular that last September, Atlanta City Council banned new data centers from opening in neighborhoods near transit and the Beltline walking trail. All right, let's get to some CES news. If you want MacBook Air looks, but you need the Windows OS, you can do boot camp, I guess. But you could also take a look at the new Asus ZenBook A14, which Engadget says the company jokingly refers to as the ZenBook Air. I imagine it's prevented from marketing it that way, but it does weigh less than a kilogram, 2.2 pounds, has a 14-inch OLED screen, 32 hours of battery life, runs on Qualcomm Snapdragon X and X Elite chips, uses ceraluminum, that's a ceramic aluminum, on almost all the surfaces. It's used ceraluminum on its laptops before, but it's using it everywhere in the ZenBook A14. And the hinge apparently works very well to counteract the lightness of that tiny frame, so it's easy to open. Lots of ports, USB-A, USB-C, HDMI, headphone jack. ZenBook A14 starts at $900. I mentioned Tuesday that NVIDIA announced a developer-oriented $3,000 Project Digits desktop computer made in partnership with MediaTek. In an investor presentation, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang said MediaTek might bring the ARM-based CPU inside the project to market on its own. MediaTek just might start selling this CPU to other people's, but he also hinted that NVIDIA might have a CPU strategy of its own, saying, obviously we have plans, but he would, quote, wait to tell you what they are. I don't know, man. By 2030, we might have dozens of CPU makers, and it's possible that none of them would be Intel. Handheld gaming PCs are another common item at CES. Acer's Nitro Blaze 11 is kind of standing out from the pack just by being huge. It's got an 11-inch 2560 by 1600 IPS display with 120 hertz refresh rate, 500 nits of brightness. Specs are solid too. Ryzen 7 chip, Radeon graphics, 16 gigs of RAM, from between 512 gigabytes to 2 terabytes of solid-state storage. If 11 inches is too big, you can opt for the more typically sized Nitro Blaze 8, with an 8-inch screen, and Nitro Blaze 7 with a 7-inch screen, which is now coming to the U.S. All three versions are going on sale in Q2, with the 11-inch starting at $1,100. The 8-inch starts at $900, and the 7 in the U.S. will cost around $800. Related to that, Valve announced that ahead of the Legion Go handheld, the Legion Go S, shipping in May, it will be shipping a beta of SteamOS, which should improve the experience on other handhelds, and users can download and test this themselves. In other words, you don't have to wait for the Legion Go in May to run a legit copy of SteamOS on another handheld without using a fork like Bazite or jumping through other hoops. The beta is expected in March, according to The Verge. At its keynote announcement at CES, Delta Airlines announced it will start installing 4K HDR QLED screens in its planes. That won't happen until 2026, so it's not coming this year. Also talking about adding Bluetooth connectivity to the entertainment consoles. That would be nice. Sooner than either of those, you're going to get free access to YouTube Premium and YouTube Music in flight. Delta made the announcement at the Las Vegas Sphere. It's that big sphere with the LEDs on the outside that you may have seen pictures of. And they ended their keynote with a concert from Lenny Kravitz. So take that, NVIDIA. San Francisco's Kombu, Kombu, showed off the Furman Station. My autocorrect tried to change it, but that's not what it's called. It's the Furman Station, which can brew kombucha for you at home. Among the advantages of using it is maintaining a stable temperature for more predictable results. Also seals the environment to reduce the chances of harmful bacteria growing. A connected app lets you set timers, monitor the temp, get other notifications on the brewing process. It's available for pre-order at $360, shipping between April and June in Canada and the United States. The eventual retail price will rise to $500. You have to provide the tea and the sugar, and if you've ever brewed kombucha, you might know about this cellulose mat called SCOBY. But everything else is self-contained, and people who are into kombucha say that this is kind of a cool way of doing it. It's a neater way of doing it. It's less messy. So I thought that was an interesting one. Also, Radio Shack. Coming back. In 2023, El Salvador's Unicomer Group, which operated a lot of Radio Shack locations in Central and South America, bought the global rights to the company, and now they're marketing electronics under the Radio Shack name, trying to open a bunch more stores too. Sadly for me, they're not using Realistic or Tandy as a brand. They're using Radio Shack with a little R. But among the 500 product offerings across 17 different categories are a Bluetooth speaker with RGB lighting that costs $58, gaming chair for $250, headphones for $28, projector for $112. So interesting gambit there. And finally, a note for any of you Pixel 4a users. You probably already saw this note from Google, but just so folks know, an upcoming update to Android 13 is going to reduce your battery life. I wrote May in the newsletter, but it's going to. And Google is offering a free battery replacement, or they'll pay you $50 just to say sorry, or you can get a $100 credit towards a new Pixel phone if you just want to upgrade. Those are the essentials for today. Let's dive a little deeper in the ongoing stories and follow up. You may notice on Tuesday's DTNS Live, Rob Dunwood talked about a product that helps correct for his dyslexia. A lot of you wrote in saying you liked hearing him talk about that. Go check that out. But if you don't have time for the full discussion on DTNS Live, here's a short interview he did with the makers of the dyslexia lamp from Lily for Life.
Yes, so I'm Frédéric Granotti. I'm the founder of Lily for Life. Lily for Life is a company that helps dyslexic persons read more efficiently. And we can actually help 80% of dyslexic persons read more easily with a lamp that we have put on the market 2 years ago. and with the screen that we are presenting to the CES in Vegas this week. And our scientists have understood that dyslexic persons have two dominant eyes, which means that when a dyslexic person reads a text, each of his eyes sees the text at the very same time. So information comes from the eyes to the brain at the same time, which creates superposition of images and difficulties to read.
One of the reasons why I lose space.
Yes, absolutely.
So quickly, yeah.
Exactly. And so with a strobe effect, we managed to give the impression to the brain that images come one after the other, like if the person were not dyslexic. And with this lamp and this screen, we have to choose the right frequency for the strobe effect, and we help indeed 80% of dyslexic persons read more efficiently.
Did you know that DTNS also has video? Watch DTNS live on YouTube and Twitch, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern. We're live. Or you can watch it anytime you want after we're live. That's youtube.com/Daily Tech News Show or twitch.com/Daily Tech News Show. We end every episode of DTNS with some shared wisdom. Today, R.W. Nash is helping us understand. Writes, hope all you from LA are in a safe area. It's 10:18 and still very frosty out. Man, thank you. A lot of you have reached out and said that you hope we're good. I'm in Las Vegas. My wife is in Los Angeles where we live. Thankfully, our house is not near the fires. It's a little too close for comfort. It's a little nerve-wracking, I'm not going to lie. But we are lucky enough. So is Sarah Lane. So is Roger Chang, who are also in the LA area. We're lucky enough to be okay now. But thank you for your thoughts. And my thoughts go out to all the people who are not in a safe area and have had to evacuate. And a lot of people have lost their homes. I don't tend to like to talk about these sort of things on the show because we're focused on technology, but this is close to home, and a bunch of you like R.W. Nash are sending these, so I need to acknowledge them. To the rest of R.W. Nash's email, I should have bought shares in NVIDIA. I hear you, man. Justin Rubber Young, always with a measured and informed perspective. Thank you for that. Good that you had Anchor on, my go-to for GAN chargers and power banks. I'm not sure the solar umbrella would work well in the lower Rumney Valley now. I expect it's a little foggy over there. And we also got this from Toby, who said, I just wanted to drop a quick note to say how well the mini updates from CES are going. Really fun to get these little updates a couple of times a day in the feed. Thank you, Toby. I'm glad you're enjoying it too. Big thanks to R.W. Nash and Toby for contributing to today's show. Thank you for being along for Daily Tech News Show. The show is made possible by our patrons, patreon.com/DTNS. DTNS is a live version as well. DTNS Live, YouTube and Twitch. Find details about that at dailytechnewsshow.com. Talk to you tomorrow.